Alright. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This is daily vlog number, I don't know, 63? Something like that. Numbers are hard, folks. Maybe it's not. I don't know. What was yesterday? I don't know. I'll have the number right when I put it in the title. It's a daily vlog. So, today, you know how I mentioned, like, I want to do a little bit more Essence20 stuff, because that's what you guys want. Well, today, or yesterday, actually, was Renegade Con. I have no idea if Renegade Con is an annual thing, semi-annual, quarterly, I don't know. But basically, the people that make all the Essence20 games, all the Essence20 games are owned by Renegade Game Studios. And so regularly, I don't know how regularly, but regularly, they do this thing they call Renegade Con, where they announce a bunch of new products. And that happened yesterday. I would say the vast majority of the new things that they announced at Renegade Con were mostly board games. However, there was some pretty juicy Essence20 news, so I figured I would at least talk about it here. Now, I mentioned at the end of last year, I'm probably not going to keep up with all of the Essence20 books if I have to buy them myself. As I said before, like I'm on disability. It is an extremely limited budget. And I live in my brother's house. He's a new homeowner. We've lived here for a few years now, but he's still new to homeowning. And the house itself has been around since like the 70s. So things break. And when things break in a house that you rent, you call the landlord. When things break in the house that you own, you call the repair people and they charge you thousands of dollars to fix them. So I'm always trying to be very careful about the purchases that I make, so that in the instance that something breaks around the house that is really essential, which has happened a couple of times, I can help out with that. So limited funds means that I'm more likely than not going to buy every single Essence20 book to do an in-depth review. Now, if anybody at Renegade or the Essence20 system in general is watching this, maybe since I'm one of the most consistent Essence20 content creators on YouTube, you might want to give me review copies. I don't need physicals. You can just give me PDFs. That might be nice. But unless something like that happens, I'm probably not going to be able to review all of these. That being said, there's at least two that I think I'm going to desperately need. And I'll explain that as I talk about them here. So, without any further ado, let's talk about the new stuff coming out. So, I am going to talk about it by the prospective release date. As always, is looking at least all the ones that I've seen here. Renegade does this thing where if you purchase the physical book, either before it's published or generally a week or two after it's published, depending on the product, you'll get a PDF for free. That is how I have purchased every single Essence20 book I own. You can see a few of them behind me, and I have a lot more. Basically, every PDF of Essence20 that I own, I have the physical book as well, which I like. I really like having physicals in addition to digital. Digital is easier for me to read. Physical means if something were to happen to my computer, I don't lose everything. So, the first thing, I guess the first thing we should talk about, there are a G.I. Joe role-playing game beginner box and a Transformers role-playing game beginner box that are both supposed to be coming out in May 2024, so just a couple of months. And they're exactly what they sound like. They come with a Dungeon Master screen. They come with some basics. It looks like, let me see what they have. So, includes playing the game booklet and 2 adventures, 8 pre-generated characters. It contains dice, DM screen, and all you need to play. So this is very much like the red box from D&D, or there are literally tons and tons of kind of beginner boxes for RPGs. And they all tend to be basically the same thing. You'll have a streamlined version of the rules. They'll generally come with a DM's screen. Sometimes they come with dice. This one in particular is coming with dice. And then they will have at least one pre-written adventure for you to do. I was looking at the Transformers one. It comes with 2 pre-written adventures. And then they also will come with pre-generated characters. These are really, really great gifts for people that are interested in this system but are not sure if they want to start investing in $50 and $60 books. This is a great way to kind of get around that. And they're also really nice kind of infection vector style gifts. The way I got into tabletop role-playing games, I wanted to play tabletop role-playing games ever since I first saw Tabletop, and they did the Dragon Age RPG, and I thought it was the most amazing thing ever. And I just badly wanted to start playing tabletop role-playing games. And so I started a board gaming group, and we would just come to my apartment. We'd play board games for a couple hours once a week. And as that kept going, I basically got kind of a quick start guide. They have a quick start guide for the Dragon Age RPG. And that's how I got people to let me play in my very first D&D campaign. So beginners boxes like this are really, really great for anyone that wants to start playing. I have no idea of the quality of the stuff in there because it doesn't exist yet. But everything else I've seen from Essence20 has been good stuff. So yeah, Transformers and G.I. Joe. I did not see a Power Rangers beginner box. That may just be that I missed it, or it may be that they just don't have one yet. But get on that. I like Power Rangers. And who knows? Maybe with Netflix now owning Power Rangers TV show rights, the rights for the license itself might be getting kind of flutzed around a little bit. Still owned by Hasbro. But Hasbro might be trying to put the Power Rangers into a different direction, and so perhaps that means that their beginner's box will somehow coincide with the new Power Rangers TV series that's theoretically in the works. Who knows? All I can say that there's nothing for a beginner box for Power Rangers right now, and both the beginner boxes are meant to come out in May 2024. I will be purchasing neither of them because they don't have digital versions, and again, I can't afford it. But they run for about $35. Moving on. Thank you, water bottle. All right. The next thing. Also, May 2024 is the G.I. Joe role-playing game Quartermaster's Guide to Gear Sourcebook. Effectively, this is a source book that is it's hyper focused on G.I. Joe because, as I've mentioned before, of the 3 main Essence20 books, we're ignoring My Little Pony because while it is Essence20, it is a very, very different Essence20 game. Of the 3 main Essence20 books or series, Power Rangers, G.I. Joe, Transformers, G.I. Joe is the one that deals the most with weapons and equipment and things like that, and especially vehicles. Vehicles are a really, really big thing for G.I. Joe. So it makes sense that this would be kind of focused for G.I. Joe. However, if you have watched my Finster's Monster-matic cookbook review, it is very themed towards Power Rangers because the big thing for Power Rangers is the whole Monster of the Week thing and then the Zords. Like, that's the things that really makes Power Rangers unique. And so threats, as far as Essence20 is concerned, Power Rangers is the game that needs the most number of different kinds of threats. Because unlike both G.I. Joe and Transformers, where you have these villains that are recurring, Power Rangers, you don't really have that often. Obviously, you'll always have characters like Goldar or Scorpina that come back on a regular basis, but every episode there is a new monster, and that just doesn't happen in Transformers or Power Rangers. So it made sense that the book for Essence 20 that was basically about this is how you make threats would be something that was geared towards Power Rangers. However, as I said in my review, I think the Monstermatic Cookbook is a core book for all of the Essence 20 games because it goes into specific detail about how to create threats in the Essence 20 system. And the nice thing about the Essence 20 system is you really can take G.I. Joe threats and use them in Power Rangers without really needing to do much. The most I might do is I might reskin them so that it may turn from like a Red Ninja Assassin into a Putty Patroller or something, just to give the players something a little different to deal with. That's really all you have to do. The threats are the threats are the threats are the threats are the threats. So the reason I'm talking about that is this Quartermaster's Guide to Gear. I haven't seen anything in it. My guess is this is going to be the kind of definitive guide on how to create gear in Essence 20. And again, that's one of the things that I love about Essence 20 is that when you are creating your character in just about every other RPG that exists, your choice of weapons is really not going to make a massive difference. In general, it will change your damage die. It might change which attribute you use to attack with, and sometimes it'll change your range that you can affect people. But the vast majority of things that are going to change how your character plays are built into the class or in the skill system or whatever it is, and equipment is just kind of, oh, well, here's the stuff that you need to do all the cool stuff that's described in your character sheet. Essence 20 isn't like that. Your equipment defines your character just as much as your role, as your origin, as your influences. So, if this book is exactly what I predict it is, which is the guide, the Essence 20 guide to equipment, this is going to be another kind of essential book for Essence 20 owners that want to homebrew their own stuff. Could you homebrew your own threats before Finster's Monstermatic? Absolutely. But the amount of information in theory behind everything that's in Finster's Monstermatic Cookbook made it significantly easier, and just you would make better monsters by reading that book. And I think, this is my prediction, again, I have no insider knowledge whatsoever, I think that's what this is going to be, is this Quartermaster's Guide to Gear is going to be that kind of a book. As far as specifics of what's in here, the features: 16 new weapons from G.I. Joe history, a new armor type, 40 upgrades, and 18 new vehicles. And again, with Essence 20, for the most part, everything is really interchangeable. They have an entire book that describes how to change influences, origins, and roles between the different systems. And those are the most complex things that you have to translate, because a Transformer is very, very different from a Power Ranger, and a Power Ranger is very, very different from a G.I. Joe. So that takes a little bit of finesse, but equipment and upgrades and things like that, there's nothing you need to do to translate from G.I. Joe to Power Rangers. You just might have to make it look flashier for Power Rangers. And the same thing about Power Rangers to G.I. Joe or Transformers to G.I. Joe. Really, there's not a ton for equipment that's going to be difficult. So 16 new weapons are going to be stuff that you can reskin for any game that you want. The new armor type, the armor is something that's a little more unique to G.I. Joe, so that one might not translate as well. And then 40 upgrades. Upgrades really, again, just aren't going to need to be translated. They can just be taken over. And then 18 new vehicles. Again, that tends to be a more G.I. Joe thing. But as far as 16 new weapons and 40 upgrades, that in and of itself is a massive, massive boon for anyone playing any Essence to 20 games. And the other times that they have added new equipment, again, a lot of times it comes out of G.I. Joe books, they've been really cool. Like, they added defensive shields and the things like that, and that was really interesting. In the Cobra Commando it's just a source book, they added poisons and other things like that, which were really fascinating and interesting to be able to add to various systems. So that in and of itself sounds really cool. In addition to that, a new focus for each role in G.I. Joe, so a bunch of new subclasses. From the drone pilot for infantry to the neutralizer for technicians. That sounds cool. 3 new origins and 8 new influences, from the Junker to the Futurist for gear-centric characters. Again, all of these, there's already a template on how to translate them to different things, so still very, very useful. Guidance for historical, retro future, and cyberpunk settings allows GMs to explore the past and future of technology on the battlefield. Again, that's probably going to be relatively G.I. Joe focused. And then ready-to-use G.I. Joe and Cobra bases, including Cobra Terradromes and the USS Flag aircraft carrier. So basically, I'm assuming that's going to be a map and then just a bunch of lore and adventure hooks and stuff like that. They have done that in other books, and that tends to be what it is. So overall, the Quartermaster's Guide to Gear source book is one of the 2 books that I am most definitely going to be purchasing. Because again, to me, I'm predicting here, this is pure prediction, I have no insider knowledge. I predict this is going to be another Finster's Monstermatic style book where it basically explains an essential aspect of the Essence20 system. As I mentioned with the Finster Monstermatic, I wish a lot of that information had been in the core book, or that there was a generic version of Essence20 that all that stuff came with. But to be blunt, it makes sense how they are separating these things out. Threats are most often used with Power Rangers with their whole Monster of the Week thing, so it made sense for the threat source book to be linked to Power Rangers. Gear is essential for G.I. Joe, and so it makes sense for the Gear source book to be linked to G.I. Joe. As far as what I think the source book for Transformers is going to be, I think it would be interesting if, because Origins in particular are so important to Transformers, I think if they were to link the kind of Origins influences roles aspect of Essence20 to Transformers, that might make sense. Or maybe just the Origins and Origins and influence things to Transformers, and then they would have a separate book similar to the crossover guide for roles. That would be cool too. I'm hoping that stuff like that comes out. Again, I don't know it's ever going to come out, but that's what I would like to see. So anyway, the G.I. Joe role-playing game Quartermaster's Guide to Gear source book retails at $45. And like I said, it comes out in May. And just to clear up anything, I am not in any way associated with Renegade or Essence20 in general. I have spoken with one of the people that designs Essence20, and that is the closest interaction I've had. And by spoken with, I mean we've had a couple Twitter messages between each other, and we've conversed. I've conversed actually with a couple different members of the writing staff in my comments. You can see that there. But I am in no way sponsored by Renegade or Essence20. As of the recording of this, I have never received a product for free from them for review purposes or otherwise. So this is just me talking about things that excite me. So that being said, moving on. The next book coming out in June 2024. It's Power Rangers role-playing game Beneath the Helmet Sourcebook. This is the other aspect that makes Power Rangers a little bit different from everything else. In Power Rangers, you are secret superheroes that actually have lives outside of Power Rangers. And that's effectively what this is. Basically, what Beneath the Helmet is all of the threats not as in threats as in monsters in Essence20, but threats to their lifestyle and keeping the secret and everything that Power Rangers have to deal with on a daily basis when they are not Power Rangers. I'm actually going to read the little description here because it's easier. So your unmorphed life is getting a lot more interesting. Beneath the Helmet presents new story opportunities for teenagers with attitude in any Power Rangers role-playing game campaign. How does your Ranger balance saving the world with pop quizzes, performance reviews, and the challenges of everyday life? And what happens when your principal or boss is more of a monster than they appear? Discover the stories between adventures with new downtime rules. New downtime rules, detailing your home base and creating your own team. Experience a new core Power Rangers role. They are introducing new roles, the Dark Ranger. Plus, play the game in new ways with alternate role paths, the Aqua and Graphite Rangers. So, basically blue and silver, but different versions of them. Face off against Mesogog, Sledge, and Lord Arcanon. Along with their henchmen and minions. Find new rules for mortal threats, from the landlord who doesn't accept saving the day for rent to the politician who sees Power Rangers as a menace. Work with key characters from Dino Thunder and Dino Charge, including Anton Mercer, Haley Zichter, Keeper, and Professor Tommy Oliver. So what this is it introduces some new roles. Again, Aqua, Graphite, and Dark Ranger. But it focuses on the more mundane aspects of Power Rangers that really haven't been expanded in any of the books thus far. Most of the books have been focusing on the Power Ranger aspect of Power Rangers. But if you've ever watched any of the shows, half of the show is about the stuff that they're doing when they're not Power Rangers, and dealing with, especially when you're dealing with teenagers with attitude as opposed to adult Power Rangers teams. You know, a lot of times they have to worry about tests and school dances and whether or not they have a date for them, or their first job and whether or not they're going to get fired. Dealing with their parents who don't know that they're Power Rangers. Dealing with the principal. I mean, Principal Kaplan was a major character in the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 1. And authority figures have shown up here and there, depending on the series that you're talking about. But yeah, so this, again, is a really, really interesting aspect of being able to run, you know, Power Rangers games where they're not always being Power Rangers. You can let them kind of deal with being kids. Or adults, or whatever it was. My Power Rangers mini Kiki campaign, they were all college students because I still wanted the school kind of thing going on, but I didn't want to be dealing with kids. And it was really fun. I mean, we got to deal with, one of them had a job that we had to kind of work around. And another one was trying to be an independent journalist, and they had classes they had to deal with. And all that stuff I kind of had to make up on my own. This is going to give GMs in general a little bit of a step up. As far as features, this is what they say. Player and Game Master contact along with story ideas for teenagers with attitude, not merely Power Rangers. Dino Charge and Dino Thunder Rangers. There's Zords and equipment and adversaries. So this one is going to focus on Dino Charge and Dino Thunder, which, if you're unaware, Dino Thunder was the series that brought back Jason David Frank, rest in power. Jason David Frank as Tommy Oliver, and it started with a 3-person team. Eventually, Tommy became the 4th Ranger. And then Mercer's son, I can't remember his name right now, he became the White Ranger. He basically was very much a parallel for Tommy's original introduction to the Power Rangers, where he started off as an evil ranger and then became good. The same thing happened with the White Ranger into the Dino Thunders. He starts as a bad ranger and turns good. Dino Charge, I think right now holds the record for just the most number of Power Rangers, because there's like 40 bajillion of them. And it was the season right before Ninja Steel, and it came right after Samurai. So it was right in the Neo Saban era, right in the middle of the Neo Saban era. I have watched a fair amount of Dino Thunder. It is beloved by fans. Dino Charge is a little bit more contentious among fans, but it's still overall, people tend to like it. So that stuff. New player options, Aqua, Graphite, and Dark Ranger. And I'm assuming Dark Ranger is going to be based on the Dark Ranger from Dino Charge, which didn't actually show up in Dino Charge. It actually showed up in the latest, the final Power Rangers series, Cosmic Fury. That's where the Dark Ranger actually shows up. Slight spoilers. And then discover the stories between adventures with the new downtime rules, detailing your home base and creating your own team. Real-world threats to face when the mask comes off. And then challenge legendary villains like Mesogog, Sledge, and Lord Arcanon, along with their henchmen and minions. So, bunch of new threats, which is kind of essential for Power Rangers in general. Again, they have to have threats. And then, again, the focus of the book is going to be on dealing with all of the non-Power Ranger stuff and how to balance that life as a Power Ranger, which for me, depending on the season, is something that I've always found really interesting and create a lot of conflict for characters. And then there were some seasons that it just wasn't an issue, like Ninja Storm. For the most part, they really didn't have to deal with like school or anything because they went to a ninja school and they were the super ninja rangers and stuff like that. So most of their interpersonal conflicts were entirely interpersonal. Or if you look at something like SPD, SPD is their job. So they don't have to worry about keeping it secret or anything like that. If you go to something like Mystic Force, all of them worked for this music store, and the owner of the store didn't know that they were Power Rangers. So that was an interesting aspect of the things, because they always had to come up with reasons why they had to kind of ditch their jobs, and it got them into trouble every so often. So I'm interested to see how this is. Because it is Power Rangers, I 100% will be purchasing this, because that's what I do. Like, I'm always going to be purchasing the Power Rangers books because Power Rangers is the only reason that I got into Essence20. I love Essence20, don't get me wrong. G.I. Joe is super cool. Transformers super cool. I'm a Power Rangers boy. If you can't see my shelf of Power Rangers memorabilia, I like me some Power Rangers. So, yeah. That one's going to retail again at $45. And, again, it should be out in June 2024. Moving on. The final newly announced sourcebook is G.I. Joe role-playing game Intercontinental Adventures Factions in Action Volume 2 sourcebook. And this is one where I'm not as sold on it. It's going to be coming out in August 2024. And effectively, it introduces a bunch of new factions. Factions have technically been a thing in the Essence20 system since Power Rangers. However, they weren't technically really blatantly identified. Power Rangers were a faction, G.I. Joe were a faction, Transformers were a faction. And when the crossover book came out, they basically identified and defined what factions were more, because factions are essential for translating things between systems. So that's when they kind of defined factions, and then since defining them in that book, they've been kind of expanding the factions that exist. They introduced, I think, the Silver Guardians for Power Rangers. I can't remember the additional factions that they've introduced for Transformers. However, for G.I. Joe, they went faction crazy. There's 40 bajillion factions. In the last Faction in Action sourcebook, I mentioned that Essence20, one of the things I loved about it at first was it was a relatively rules-light system. There wasn't a ton of complexity in it, but there was enough complexity to make some really interesting stuff. And then they started introducing factions and crossover things, and the kind of sidekick or whatever they call it system, where you can call in allies to help you. And then they expanded the faction system, and it started getting really confusing. And in the last one, my last review of the first Factions in Action book, I mentioned, hey, you guys are flirting with the idea of too much complexity. You guys are starting to get to the point where you're going down the Pathfinder route of, if we just put more shit into it, that means we're better. And that isn't right. And it's going to start affecting how people play your game, because it's going to become so overloaded with options that people aren't going to want to play anymore. It's going to be too confusing. That is my one fear for this Factions in Action book, is as long as they don't introduce any brand new systems in it, and it's just another list of factions, it'll probably be fine. But G.I. Joe already has so many factions, and in the first Factions in Action book, they introduced ways where you can change factions mid-game. So this just adds another system of complexity onto it. And if all this is more factions, it's perfectly fine. But G.I. Joe has a lot of factions, which, to be fair, if you look at the G.I. Joe source material, there's a crap ton of factions. Like, it's not like these guys are making them up. They're taking it from the source material. The problem is the source material was created to sell action figures, which constantly need to be making new action figures, which is why there's so many different factions. It was a way for them to justify creating color swaps and minor retools of a bunch of different characters, because, well, this is a different faction, and it's a different version of that character. It's a different person that's kind of similar to that character, stuff like that. So, the actual features: in-depth looks at the history of the I'm going to say this wrong, Arashikage, which are ninjas, the Dreadnoks, and October Guard, how these independent factions impact G.I. Joe and Cobra, and how to run campaigns partially or entirely dedicated to the Arashikage and Dreadnoks. Contact and threat stat blocks for key members of each faction, including multiple versions of the long-awaited Storm Shadow. Contact and threat stat blocks for international characters, like G.I. Joe's Canadian member, Backstop, Australian member Skymate, and Cuban member Snowstorm. Does it snow in Cuba? I actually don't know. New factions, origins, influences, and focus options. 40 new general perks, 17 new gear and upgrades, 11 new vehicles, and more. So, again, there's a lot to this book. A lot of it is going to be focused on those three factions that I'm not going to say again, because one of them is weird, kind of Japanese-esque stuff, and I don't speak Japanese, and I pronounce it very poorly. And it looks like it's going to be mostly focused on all right, I'm going to say it again, the Arashikage and the Dreadnoks, where the October Guard are kind of going to be a side thing, which is very similar to the other Faction in Action, where there was two groups that they mainly focused on, and then they had some other ones in there as well. Then a bunch of new perks, some new gear and upgrades, some new vehicles, stuff that you would expect from a G.I. Joe book. And then again, some new factions, origins, influences, and focus or foci. So subclasses, origins and influences, stuff that you see in literally every single Essence20 book. Overall, like I said, this one is the one that I'm least sold on, unless I happen to have extra money around August or whenever they release the PDF, because I generally tend to pre-order them when the PDF goes live, just so I can get the PDF immediately. Unless I have some extra money, which isn't really a thing for me, I'm probably going to skip this one. Not because I don't like it or anything like that. It's just I eventually have to kind of draw a line in the sand of this is where my money is going. And I have other things, other very expensive things that I need to fix. Like my computer seems to be slowly dying, and that's a bad thing because I use it for literally everything. So I've been looking at getting a new computer to deal with a bunch of stuff, and that is an extremely expensive process, especially for someone that doesn't make like half of the poverty level. Yeah. So that one is the one that I will probably skip, unless again if anybody at Renegade or Essence20 wants to give me a review copy, I'm totally fine with that. But yeah. They didn't announce any new Transformers books. However, I do know that there is a Transformers book that's coming out pretty soon here. I'm going to see if I can't find it. Where are you? Transformers. There. Let's do that. Which one was it? There it goes. So let's talk about this real quick because I don't think I've done a ton onto it. It's supposedly coming out next month. It's called the Transformers role-playing game, The Enigma of Combination Source Book. And it's basically about combiner Transformers and the things like that. Features new character options, including influences, origins, and role focuses. Several methods Transformer characters can use to join with others, be they binary bonded or a member of a Gestalt team. New gear, including methods to make existing weapons larger and more deadly. And then advice on running a combiner campaign, including plot hooks, threats, and allies. So this one very, very kind of specialized for Transformers specifically because of the combiner aspect. And they even have the table of contents already there. And it shows that the last page on the table of contents is page 120. So it's probably about maybe 125, maybe 130 pages. So not a massive book. This is another one that, again, if I happen to have extra money when the PDF comes out, I might pick it up, but I'm just not as focused on focused on Transformers because, again, it's just not my passion. I love Transformers. I think they're really, really great. And if they make when they make, because they said that they were going to do this, when they make a Beast Wars supplement, I'll be all over that. I don't think they've made that yet. My brain doesn't work nearly as well as I would like it to, so I'm going to look in my Essence20 stuff just to make sure I didn't. No, they have Decepticon Directive, and that's all I've got is that in the core rulebook. All right, so I don't think they've made one yet. So if they make a Beast Wars one, because that was my introduction to Transformers, I will probably pick that up. This one, again, unless Renegade or someone at Essence20 wants to give me a review copy, probably going to skip over this one because I just don't have the money for it. All the books I've talked about today, basically everything but the beginner boxes, are all retailing at $45. So once you factor in shipping, for me, shipping has been anywhere between about 10 to 15 bucks. That turns it into almost $60. Which for me is a lot of money. So your mileage may vary, but yeah. Overall, I am excited about the new stuff. Again, I love the Essence20 system. I wish I could go back to my Power Rangers series because that was so much fun and I had such a blast playing with those people. But one of those people is massively busy because she's awesome. And the rest of them are already playing in games with me that I need to finish those campaigns. So one day I will find a way to do like a one-shot or something with my Power Rangers team again, just so I can bring it back up. I really loved the Night Sentinels, which is the Power Rangers team that I created with those players. And yeah, but excited for this. I'm interested to know what you guys were most excited about. Again, the vast majority of the stuff at Renegade Con this year was board game stuff. Like they had a lot of Axis and Allies board games stuff, including I think like a Transformers Axis and Allies that I thought. It was either Transformers or G.I. Joe. I can't remember which one. And then there's a bunch of new board games. Quite a few of them look really cool. Like Renegade has been putting out some killer board games for a while. And then, as always, they have a Power Rangers deck building game. They have a My Little Pony deck building game. They have a G.I. Joe deck building game. They have a Transformers deck building game. I have two. I have the core deck building game. And then what else do I have? Oh, the Zeo expansion to the Power Rangers deck building game. I think the game is really cool. I've not had a chance to play it with anyone because I am alone. And I don't interact with real life people ever. But read through the rules. I think it's really, really cool. It'd definitely be something that I want to play eventually. If I can ever get over social anxiety disorder. Yeah, overall, I'm excited about the new stuff, especially the gear book that's coming out in May. That's a really big deal. Anything that gives me more tools that allow me to customize what I'm doing makes me happy. If you guys saw any of the Designing New Dragons I did on any of the Essence20 stuff, some of my favorite things that I did were building the weapons, especially when we did the Transformer stuff. I had such a blast just building weapons for the Transformers and deciding on which ones were going to be integrated and which ones were going to be external. Like, that is just so much fun. And the more options I am given to do that, the more fun I will have. I don't know if you guys remember just how thrilled I was when I found out there was an entire category of things that could be integrated that weren't weapons. They were just equipment that you could integrate. Like, you could have like a dump truck bed that turned into a shield, or a tow cable that turned into a hook shot. Like, it was super, super cool, and I loved it. So yeah, really excited about that. I'm excited about new Power Ranger stuff. I'm always excited about new Power Ranger stuff. When I get the PDF of that, I will, of course, be going through my naming convention again, where I rename the colors to something more generic, so it's not tied to a particular color. Because I think that's the one problem that I have with the Power Rangers RPG, is that they tied the class system effectively to the colors, and I don't think they did it particularly well. I think the roles themselves are really, really good and really interesting, but the way that they tied them to the individual colors is tenuous at best, and it doesn't really reflect the reality of how the Power Rangers teams are made up in the actual series or in the comic books or anything like that. Like, there are established rules on who can be what color and what particular personalities that they have, but it's not particularly well reflected in the core book. So I do that I try to do that every single time a new color comes out, just because I feel like it's more fun that way. But anyway, that's going to be all for me today, and I will see you guys in the next time. All right? Bye-bye.